And talking education reform with Senators Michael Bennet and Lamar Alexander, as well as Randi Weingarten and Steve Perry. Thank you all again. Let me start with you, Senator, because you did start out, I promise you, since Nation at Risk, and I remember doing a story about Nation at Risk and said, you know, if a foreign country had done to our schools what we're doing to our schools, we'd have declared war, essentially. Here we are, we're still talking about we have to find a way to make this an elevated career path. How do we go?
Well, I would argue, I said the other day on the Senate floor, that if the 100 senators in the Senate faced the same odds for their kids that kids in poverty face, I guarantee you we wouldn't be hanging around the Senate floor for very long. We'd be going home to figure out how to get our kids into the finest schools with faculties that are doing the work that we were talking about earlier. One of the things that I think we need to do is understand, and this is a positive thing about our country, we need to understand that finding people that are willing to do the same job for 30 years of their life is going to be really hard to do in the 21st century. We used to do that. We'd take the best British literature student in her class and we'd make her a teacher for 30 years because we wouldn't let her do anything else. That's no longer the case. I am very interested as a result in that and thinking about how you think about compensation over a 7 or 9 year period of time, you know, in the classroom. Today we've got a system designed with a very low current wage. But we say if you hang around for 30, or if you're there for 30 years, we'll give you a pension for your retirement. Well, that incentive structure may have made sense at one time. It probably makes less sense today for new people that are coming into the profession.
Do you think that the system as it currently is protects bad teachers? Would you admit that?
I think that this system, I think that right now, whereas there's no epidemic of bad teachers, we got to do a lot better job at the preparation, the support, the nurturing, and then if somebody can't teach, the ushering them out.
But if we're 14th around the world and our
it is teachers. We can't just say that we live in a country where we have bad parents.
Let me have her just finish.
It's not. We don't have bad parents, and we don't have an epidemic of bad teachers. What these other countries do is that they do what our new teachers have just told us they want. They support and nurture. Teaching is not like speed dating. You can't just plop somebody in and say, do it, and then if they don't get the test scores that one wants, to usher them out of the profession. We have to nurture and prepare. Having said that, we have to evaluate, and we have to focus on performance. Steve is right about that, and the AFT has been focusing on how we do evaluations in a way that doesn't shield incompetence, but also doesn't allow management to have an excuse not to manage.
The problem with many of us, principals in particular, like I am, is that we spend a year or two sword fighting with the organizations that protect them to make sure that we have dotted our I's and crossed our T's to get rid of this teacher. That teacher is responsible on the low end for 120 students. So if that teacher is the Algebra 1 teacher and she's not very good, then all the children who had her for Algebra 1 do not know what they need to know. We can't get that year back. So what we need,
Steve,
you to do,
in Connecticut, we are doing the kind of innovation in terms of legislation that actually will help us identify people are doing a good job, and if they're not, to help them, and if they're still not, to usher them out of the profession.
Let me interrupt both of you at this point, only because, you know, if you're the mother of the child and the teacher that you want to help, you don't want your child with that teacher that needs help. You want it with a teacher that knows what they're doing.
But Candy, the issue becomes what's happening right now is that they're in the countries that compete us, in the schools that do well, it is a joint venture where what I'm suggesting here is that as a former classroom teacher, you cannot just say to somebody, okay, just do everything we're asking you to do with every single child without help. And what we're talking about, and what Singapore has done so well, is that they focus on evaluation and they focus on continuous improvement. That's the kind of stuff that they did, that Michael did in Denver. That's the kind of stuff that we need to do throughout the country, and we can do it.
I can tell you practically, just real quickly, if I can tell you practically, when I have a teacher, for instance, who falls asleep in class and I try to fire this individual and it takes me 4 to 6 months to fire them and I have to counsel them and provide them with the support, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about people
Steve,
not doing their job and us trying to get rid of them.
Let me call it time on this.
And you know that and I know that.
There's always a conflict with the unions versus, you know, what people want to do to get better teachers in. Right. So let's put on the table, what's out there. Well, I know you all have been working up on Capitol Hill in terms of federal legislation, federal reforms. What's the single best reform you all think is doable at the federal level right now?
Well, if you hadn't said federal level, I could have answered.
I know.
Because the whole
$71 billion, you ought to be doing something with that.
Yeah, federal spending on elementary and secondary education is about 10% of the whole package.
Sure.
And the action is in the classroom and in the community. The holy grail of elementary and secondary education is teacher evaluation and principal evaluation. How do you evaluate a good teacher, and especially how do you relate student achievement to teacher performance? We're in the Model T phase of that. We don't know how to do it very well. Michael did it in Denver.
Not very well.
But we tried it in Tennessee. Lots of people are trying it, but we need to focus. The Gates Foundation is funding that. Tennessee